Welcome to Singapore. What brings you here, and is this your first time here? You've mentioned Lee Kuan Yew as one of your political heroes. Are you planning to meet him?
I have. This is not my first time. I've been here so many times. In the mid-70s, whenever we used to go to play in Australia, we always had the stop in Singapore. And then I used to play for Kerry Peck with that World Series. So we used to travel frequently. Then I played for New South Wales. So Singapore was always a stopover. And we've seen the sort of transformation of Singapore. And what brings me here is a fundraising event last night. This is after 18 years I've come to Singapore for a fundraiser. And it's for Shaukat Khanum, which is the hospital, 50% for that and 50% for Namal University, which I've set up. So I've got these two projects. One is the hospital, now we're building a second one. And one is this university, which is the first private sector university in the rural areas of Pakistan. So the fundraiser for that. But I have, there are people for us to follow, leaders for us to follow. One of them is Lee Kuan Yew. Other was Mahathir, and then there's this right now Erdogan of Turkey. People who transform their countries by giving good governance. So really, it's the answer is no. I'm not planning to meet them, but we have followed this very closely. I've read his book, and same with Mahathir and with Erdogan.
What about Lee Kuan Yew that you really like?
I think governance. It's basically by fixing. He proved that by fixing the governance system, you can transform the society. The third world is third world because of a lack of political governance. That's why it's a third world country. And the reasons why country progress, the principles are all the same.
Your elder son is almost as old as a party, right? As your own party. And your younger son, are they exhibiting any ambitions of following in your footsteps, either as a sports person?
Well, firstly, even if they did show any inclination to going into politics, there's no chance of them inheriting Tehreek-e-Insaf. Simply because it's going to be it is a democratic party, and we'll have intra-party elections to select its leadership. But my sons, they're not. I'm not really ambitious about them becoming cricketers or anything. When fathers do not, sometimes they want their children to do what they couldn't achieve. So in my case, it's not. I'm not particularly pushed what they should do. I just want them to be fulfilled, successful human beings. And all I can do is direct them towards the road to happiness and contentment, which is that if you're privileged, you have a responsibility to the society. And the more you have, the more of a responsibility. And that's basically what I tell them, is the road to contentment.
How much time do you spend with them in a year, and how long, when they come to Pakistan, what do they do?
I spend almost all the holidays we spend together, except in the last 6 months it's become very difficult because of my politics and this election year. So this is the one sacrifice, my biggest sacrifice for my country is not seeing my children enough.
Are you planning to settle down again soon?
No plans.
After Jinnah, I don't think there's been a leader of Pakistan who's been single in office.
Yeah, that's the point. I never realized that. Yes, that's true. Jinnah's life has remarkable similarities with mine, especially his private life. But these are things you actually have no control over as you grow older. When you're young, you make these brash statements that I'll do this. When you get at my age, you realize that you make your plan and life goes another direction. Or in Quran it says, God makes his plan and man makes his plan, and there's only one plan that succeeds.
What did you mean by saying your life parallels Muhammad
Ali? Well, his personal life, he too was in politics. and then he also married someone who was a non-Muslim who converted.
Right.
She also a big age gap between her and him, and then eventually she couldn't take his political life, and then they separated, and it was quite a tough personal life for him. And then he ended up being alone. So I guess in that way it's similar.
Have you become more of a Muslim now than you were 20 years ago?
It's what is a Muslim really? It is becoming. You evolve as a human being. So I kept changing throughout my life because the more I challenge myself, the more you change. If you don't challenge yourself, you remain the same all your life. So one of the evolutionary process that took place was that I began to understand that the road to contentment, which I actually came through a spiritual evolution, is understanding the purpose of existence, which is that you're not here. So there's a materialist worldview and there is a spiritual worldview, completely different. One is living for me and I. The other is that you have a responsibility to your society if you're privileged, like I was. So therefore, that is the switch that took place in my mid-30s. And so then had this spiritual evolution not taken place, I would not be doing things I'm doing right now. I certainly would not have been in politics. It's the last thing I thought I would ever get into. And I certainly wouldn't have done social work, which I've been doing now.
I think you bowled the fastest when you were bowling at India. And the bouncers came thick and fast. In where you're heading, do you think you're going to send them a few long hops, in the interest of peace to...
No, I still hope that the fun of Indo-Pakistan series always stays, because that's one of the great pleasures which people of the subcontinent have, watching India-Pakistan play. But I think I would much rather that competition now is on the cricket field. Even more competition, who can get rid of poverty first. That's more important. As far as this animosity goes, I think that this has been so damaging for all of us. And it has hindered the growth of the subcontinent. So I think you need completely to review the way we have looked at each other. The bitterness of the border killings in 1947. That generation.
Your uncle was a victim. He used to tell me stories about people spitting in his water bowl and all that in the run up to the partition.
No, it was a horrendous time, and that animosity where people turned against each other, friends turned against each other. Well, there were a lot of heroic stories of people defending also their friends who were Muslims or who were Hindus or Sikhs. But it was I grew up with this hatred against India, because Lahore was a border town.
Absolutely.
And there were a number of people who had lost whole families in the border crossing, and similarly on the other side. So that generation has gone now, and with it has also that anger and bitterness. So I think the younger generation now wants a change. They want a different relationship. And this is the right time to move on now, because otherwise we'll be left behind in the world. Pakistan suffering more turmoil. But even in India, the levels of poverty in the subcontinent are higher than probably anywhere else in the world.
Yes, like sub-Saharan Africa.
Yeah. So we have a lot to learn from China. That, if you have peace, which is what China did. China also has a difference in Taiwan, Hong Kong. But in the end, China resorted to thinking, yes, we have a problem, we'll solve it another way. Meanwhile, they concentrated on their own people.
How would you define yourself, and what kind of Pakistan do you stand for?
I stand for what Pakistan should have been, a welfare state, a democratic state, a welfare state, a humane state. This is what Pakistan was made for. When it meant an Islamic welfare state was the vision by the founding fathers. That's what I stand for. Islam for me means humane. Islam means peace. So it means a state which is humane, which looks after its people, which is sovereign, which is democratic.
And what are you today?
I am. I look upon myself as someone who has been given more love and respect than anyone in my country, and therefore who should try his best, because success lies in the Almighty's hands, but who should try his best to give back to the society and try and change it for, as I said, what my vision is, to make it into a welfare state. The two things that struck me when I first went to England as an 18-year-old, I had come from a military dictatorship of Ayub Khan. First time I go to England, and I see for the first time a welfare state. That struck me, what the importance of how humane a state can be, towards underprivileged. And secondly, the advantages of democracy and rule of law. So these two things struck me. And I always imagined one day Pakistan would be that.